If you can hear me, I'll be up very soon. I just want to share the link with those that are not able to get the link. All right. We'll be starting now. All right, welcome everyone. I believe you can hear me. You could type on the chat section if you can hear me. All right, let's start with from our first model, like a way of introduction. Sorry for the late start. We said we're going to do a revision today, and the idea is this. Our semester course material has been divided into 3, Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. And so far, we've handled Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. We've taken every unit within these modules, and we've discussed them on our live sessions. All right. And I appreciate those that have taken their time to attend every one of these live sessions. And we had a very healthy interaction. We discussed concepts, we interacted, we even shared some controversial issues that were neither here nor there, considering the course material we had. Like, for example, in our course material, we didn't have anything written on a quasi-rural area or a semi-urban area, you know that. So, but we discussed it that once the characteristics of an urban area doesn't fit a particular area, and the characteristics of a rural area doesn't totally fit a particular area, it is most likely a quasi urban area or a semi urban area. Okay, now for this revision, I'm not going to be talking much. I'm going to be engaging you so that we see how much we've understood these things that we've been talking about. If I have to explain a concept, I will explain it. I'll be taking it unit by unit so that we can run through the entire course material given the time frame we have for this revision session. So let's start with the concept. Of course, we know this is a rural development course, and we're going to be talking about everything concerning rural development situation. So let's start talking about it because we are constrained by time. So we'll start with the first unit, unit 1. That is the concept of rural. We talked about the concept of rural, and we said that the concept of rural cannot be completely understood if we do not juxtapose it with the concept of urban, because Of course, sometimes we try to define darkness as the absence of light. And that helps us to know how to really discuss the concept of darkness once you say there's the absence of light. So when we say urban and when we say rural, when we put them side by side, it makes the point clear for us. So we started by talking about what makes a place rural. We say the ruralness of a place. What makes a place rural? Okay, so we'll not waste time. We'll start by running through what makes a place rural. We said that a place can be rural by typically defining it by these three categories of variables that we raised in our course. We isolated them from our course material. We said the number of inhabitants, the ratio of inhabitants to open land, and the type of economic activities being performed in such an area. Okay, now, I don't want to talk. Guys, this topic, what else, apart from the three you can see on your screen, makes a particular area rural? You can unmute yourself or raise up your electronic hand. I will call you. You will tell us something. I'm going to be running quick so that we can go through the entire course material given the time frame we have. Who has an idea? Who has an idea? I can't see anybody's hand up. All right, I will keep talking since I can't see anybody's hand up. All right, we said that the three criteria that makes a place rural is that the number of inhabitants there are few, and then the ratio of inhabitants to open land. You see that the land is more than the people. It's likely a rural area. Now, the economic activity in such an area is predominantly primary, in that it is agriculture, fishery, food production, exploitation of raw materials directly from nature. That place is likely to be rural. Now, another thing we'll try to raise again is that rurality in certain areas may not be what defines rurality in another area. But these are general criteria we are using here. For example, in an advanced community or an advanced country, maybe like the US, a rural area definitely will not pass as a rural area for us here, because what makes rural for them there could just be an urban area for us here. Do you understand? So in general sense, you should understand that these are one of the things we captured in the course material. So we talked about various demographic criteria, and what is that? Let's see. Okay. We talked of various demographic criteria and various concepts to distinguish rural from urban. We said nomadic countries use various demographic criteria and various concepts to distinguish rural from urban. And then the first we said is the densely and the sparsely populated areas. For a densely populated area, for Norway, like the US, we just try to explain those things. You can explain them, but I don't want to go through explaining them one after the other. I want to go through just raising the points so that if you have a question, raise up your electronic hands and I will stop there and we'll discuss it properly. Remember when we discussed this in our first class, we went through all this. Okay. Now, this is what we highlighted as the characteristics of a rural society. We say there are relatively few people in that society and they depend on natural resources. There's limited educational opportunities after secondary school. There's limited job demand and opportunities for skilled and educated labor. There is the absence of urban commodities like cafes, restaurants, theaters, galleries, malls, and things like that. Banks, manufacturing hubs, entrepreneurship ecosystems, they are absent. So these are the things that these are the things when you see in a particular area, we say, oh, this is a rural society. All right. Now, we talked about this. We said there's a sociological investigation of rural society, and it may be classified into four broad categories. We said one, studies using rurality as the independent variable. Then the second classification is comparative studies of rural societies. These are how you can study the sociological aspect of a rural society. The first is studies using rurality as an independent variable. We can have several dependent variables placed side by side by that. Then number two, comparative study of rural societies. You bring two societies, you compare them. Then number three, studies for which rural societies is the setting, that is, you are conducting this study in that society, in that place. In this the setting within which family systems are maybe investigated, within which ecological systems are investigated, cultural systems are investigated, personality system are investigated, and other phenomena are analyzed and investigated. Now, the fourth is studies of social change within each of these categories. That is category number one, number two, and number three above. And this will enable us to understand the rural society clearly. So what are the functions of the rural society? We raised that rural society primarily they enable us to get food and raw materials to urban societies. They facilitate the production of food and other raw materials to urban societies. Historically, it is the rural societies that provides the supply of people to cities or urban society. So you see, it is the rural society that feeds the urban society. And number three, there's a distinctive function of the rural society which it plays, and it is the custodian, or it plays the role of custodianship of rural of natural resources. All right, so it's only in the rural area you'll find natural resources, because in the urban areas, these things have been overclouded, or people have started living there and pushed the natural resources out or overshadowed it. And number four, modern rural society increasingly serve as residential functions with urban centers sources of livelihood. That we explained as people going back to the rural society, which is their village, as a place where they go and rest, holidays, and so on. Finally, we said the rural society, in times of societal crisis, when there are crises happening, there has been this tendency for rural society to perform security function for people. People run to their rural environment as security. Okay, now there's what we call social change in rural society. We explained it. I think we'll talk about it in another session. So let's just leave it for now. Now, what is the meaning of development? We defined it, and we said that development can be defined as a general improvement in economic, social, and political conditions of the whole society in terms of reduction or elimination of poverty, inequality, injustice, insecurity, ecological imbalance, and unemployment within the context of a growing economy. That was one of the definitions, and we raised several definitions. If you go to your course material, you will see several definitions, but this definition is beautiful. Generally, development entails a shift, not just any shift, an upward shift from one end to another and over a period of time. This is a positive development, okay? We're not talking of when people start developing negatively, all right? Development goes beyond just increase of per capita and financial aspect of people's lives. It includes change in institutional, social, administrative structures, as well as social behavior, attitude of the people, including their customs and behavior and beliefs. All right? It should be noted that development is a continuous process. It is unending. It goes on and on and on. So why we explain this, we said development goes beyond per capita income of a people. Per capita income, we try to explain as the totality of the income generated in an environment divided by the total population of the people there, that you get the average earning of the person there. I'll give an example why we explained it. We say there are 20 persons living in a particular locality, and they earn, for example, the 20,000 of them, and let's say 200,000. All right, so you divide 20,000 by 200,000, and you get maybe 1,000 naira, and you say that is the earning of the per capita earning of the people in such a place. All right, so that is the per capita earning of the people living in that place. So if you want to know if development has occurred, I think 10,000 naira, I think is not 1,000, 10,000 will be the per capita if you divide 200,000 by 2,000 persons. So if there's a development occurring, the per capita will be increasing. If it's not occurring, it will be reducing. So it's the upward shift. That's what development is all about. Now, we say the dimensions of development. We said they have the social dimension, that is the social aspect of development, the economic aspect where people improve their finances, the money they earn, the political development where the people's political awareness is heightened, political involvement is increased, cultural development where the culture, some of the culture that sets people backward is improved upon, isolated, kicked out, and then the cultures that make people move forward, progress, is accepted, imbibed, and adapted properly. That is cultural development. And then religious development, where we now have religious tolerance, we can now move on with our religion without being aggressive to people, unnecessarily aggressive. So these are the dimensions of development: social, economic, political, cultural, and religious development. Now, from the definition of development, one of the few conclusions or a few conclusions that we could extract is that development contributes to the well-being and comfort of the people. Of course, if your per capita is increasing, you have more available cash to spend. You should live a more comfortable life. We also found out that from the definitions, development is a process, not an act. Development is a continuous process. It's continuous. We also found out that it is quantitative. It increases. It can be measured. So development is quantitative. It can be measured. That is, it increases like the income we talked about now, increase in per capita income. We also found out also that it is qualitative, that it involves the total increase in the quality of life people live in the rural area or in a particular area. Either is it the people's lives in the area of education, people's life in the area of health, people's area lives in the area of equality, security, political awareness, social comfort, social cohesion, social interactions, and so on and so forth. Development and also involves a qualitative aspect. Now, it is not just the availability of road. Development, not just the availability of road. It also includes structures, availability of how people can have equal access to certain things, maybe to finances, equal access to social amenities. Then we can say that development is happening, because development happens when things get better. That's what we can find out from the different definition of development we just talked about. Now, what are the steps in development? We said one, an informal survey. An informal survey should be carried out before you carry out a developmental project for a people. If that is, you try to find out and identify the communities concerned. What do the people need? What do they need? Once you can do that, you are good. At least you identify the existential issues for them. I've studied this course for a period of time. I realized that when we shared this particular issue with some of my students, some talked about development project that came to their communities that the community abandoned. The people didn't need it, but the politicians thought the people needed it and brought it, but yet the people didn't need it. So they abandoned it and it was not sustained. So a survey enables you to identify what the community actually needs. That is the first step in bringing about development. Number two, identification of a small group of leaders or interested groups who can serve as the initial set or initiating set that will help you to galvanize this development, help you to bring about this community concern. We could also call them opinion leaders. Number three, identification of immediate community problem, because when you try to carry that survey, you will see that maybe 3 or 4 prominent problems will be raised, identified. Then Number three, we are talking about identification of immediate community problem is to sort them and find out which one is the immediate community problem first to start with. Then sharing of problems identified with the community leaders for legitimacy or for them to help you legitimate them. Say this one has been identified. We identified that security is a concern. What do you think about it? You say, okay, security is not supposed to be a problem. Don't worry, we know the boys that are involved. Don't worry about that one. We know we'll deal with it. So you see that it helps you to narrow your development to another angle because you perceive security as an issue. But the elders are telling you that security is not an issue. Probably they've dealt with it. What you are seeing is maybe the fallout and just remnants. And probably they can go back to the drawing board and deal with the remainder. So if you put all your resources in that, you'll be handling a problem that they have already solved. All right. So then the fifth one is diffusion of problems and definition of needs. So you have to try to do that. Then the sixth one, securing citizens' commitment to act and identification of needed resources. Then the next is appraisal of available internal resources and invitation of external aids necessary for solving the problems identified. Then you formulate, or you call for formulation of a detailed plan of action, including a timetable. Then you carry out the action and evaluate the entire process and the result. Carrying out the action means you work for implementation, you implement your developmental plans, and then you evaluate what you have done. Then you evaluate your result as well as the process. Then you identification or identify problems or needs and plan for the continuation of the process, because we said development is not an act, it's a continuation, it's a continuum, it's a process. So once you have identified issues that you had along the way, try to mitigate them going forward. All right. So that was what we handled as our first week. Okay, that's not all. With development, we try to define rural development. So let's go straight to that. Rural development. Okay, now we said rural development can be viewed as the development of the moral, social, political, and economic potentialities of rural communities to enhance their self-reliance through the provision of appropriate infrastructure, such as pipe-borne water, electricity, good roads, small-scale industries, and increase their political consciousness and participation, promote their moral and social well-being, which will result in tolerance, good discipline, justice, fairness, kindness, love, and peace. This definition was given by Nwuobi 2007. You see, that definition is an all-encompassing definition. You can see that it just touches rural development in all aspects of it. Okoye in 1997, citing Fela in 2000, defines rural development as the process of making life more satisfying and fulfilling for millions of people who live in the rural area. That's a more simplistic one, all right? Now, there are three important features of rural development. These are, one, improving the living standard of the subsistence population, which involves the mobilization and allocation of resources so as to reach desirable balance over time between the welfare and productive services available to the rural subsistence population. Number two, mass participation. Of course, if you don't get the people to participate in rural development, you may as well just be wasting your time. Number three, making the process self-sustaining. If the process can be sustained beyond the implementers of the program, it is a waste of time. Making the process self-sustaining requires the development of appropriate skills and the implementation capacity and the presence of institutions at the local, regional, and national level to ensure effective additional financial and human resource for the continued development of the subsistence sector. So you see that these are the three important features of rural development. Now, we move to the goals of rural development. The goals of rural development can be summarized as this. Number one, generation of new employment, more equitable access to arable land, widespread improvement on health, nutrition and housing for rural people, broadening opportunities for all the individuals to realize their full potentials through education. Then number six, a strong voice for all rural people in shaping their decisions and actions that affect their lives. Now, these are the goals of rural development. Anytime a rural development program is articulated and put in place, it is aiming at achieving one of these goals. Now, rural development process, we said that there are various traditional approaches used for rural development in Nigeria, and they have been classified according to Akali in 1997 into rural-urban interaction, intersectoral or zonal coordination, and the packaged approach. Let's take it one by one. Rural-urban interaction simply means that the process of rural development focuses on planning along the line and within the framework of all national or the overall national development plan. So you take rural development, you embed it into the national development plan and ensure that the national development plan enables it to get to the place it should get to. That is what we call the rural-urban interaction. Here, provision for rural development is integrated in the overall agricultural development agenda, both at the local, the state, and the federal government levels. This strategy or this approach has failed to achieve much of the anticipated results implementers had looked out for because little recognition was accorded to rural development in terms of eroding or trying to achieve some kind of significance in the national plan. So these are some of the things. Now, the second one is intersectoral and zonal coordination. This process involves the coordination of sectoral programs that were, before that time, isolated, all right, from the zonal development programs. They were programs that were sitting in individually and in isolation. But this process comes and coordinates all of them together. It assumes that all the sectors or the zones, the zonal rural development programs are well conceived and that effective coordination would make them attain their goals. So this particular approach takes coordination more important than any other one. It has its own shortfalls. Then the packaged approach, this process is founded on the diffusionist theory of development, which simply means that innovations developed in other areas or outside a particular area can be brought into that particular area or that rural area by a presumed rural development expert. It's just like you go to China and borrow their technology. You go to Singapore and borrow their technology. In this case, the rural development plan can be in Singapore, Malaysia, or in Kano. You borrow it and bring it to Abeokuta. That's what this package approach is talking about. And some of the examples of such is found in the farm settlement schemes of the defunct Western region, the Operation Feed the Nation program that existed in the past, National Accelerated Food Production Program, Agricultural Development Program, and so on. Okay. We also talked about the objectives of rural development and the principles of rural development. Let's highlight them quickly. If you have a question, please type it in the chat and I will slow down and attend to your question. This is the revision. So I'm going to stop at a particular time and start asking questions rather than speak. I'm speaking because some people joined our class lately and they didn't have the opportunity to get this explanation the way we have got it. But they have the opportunity to watch the instructional videos. They are all there on our study platform. So the objectives of rural development. Number one, promotion of social, cultural, and economic well-being of the rural population. Number two, promotion of sustained and orderly development of the vast resources in the rural area for the benefit of the rural people, principally, and the nation as a whole. Of course, the nation must be brought into the equation. Number three, increase in and the diversification of job opportunities and improvement of income in the rural area. Number four, mobilization of rural population for self-help and self-sustaining programs. Okay, number five, I will come to your question very soon. Benedict. Number 5, upliftment of the technological-based industry in the rural areas. Now, this is the objectives of rural development. Now, what are the facilitating factors? Whenever you go out to solve a rural development objective, what are the things that can help facilitate it? Number 1, farmers and small rural entrepreneurs should be regarded as the centerpiece of the rural development strategy. That will enable the program to succeed. Number 2, government should play a minimal and catalytic and facilitating role and not direct production role in rural development. Why is it so? Anytime you give people things without them putting in their own effort, they tend to see you like Father Christmas. And that way, they are not committed to the program or to the process. They're only looking out for you to solve their problem. So government should play a minimal role. Just play a catalytic role. That is, you try to catalyze what is happening, ignite it, then let the people take it and run with it. That way, it is sustainable. Number 3, to ensure continuity and acceptance, and that external induced projects are short-lived, rural residents should be involved in the identification, formation, implementation, and evaluation of rural development projects. I mentioned this earlier. That way, they see the project as their own. That is a facilitating factor. Number 4, rural development strategy should be emphasized, should emphasize institutional coordination, interministerial and interdepartmental links. Consensus are also important to ensure institutional integration at all levels. And then number 5, development service and amenities should be functionally integrated across different levels of human settlements in the rural. Now, we said, I will answer your question very soon, Benedict. I noted your question. I noticed you said, what are the hindrances to rural development? I will give it to you very soon. Don't worry, these questions may be answered almost immediately, but let's just continue. Now, the next we want to talk about are indicators of rural development. When rural development has happened, how will you know? That's what we call rural development indices. Some of you may not be conversant with this. When you take your exams, the examiner may say, what are the indicators of rural development? What they're simply saying is the same thing we mean here, rural development indices. So I'm trying to make it easy for you. Now, one of the indicators or the indices for rural development is that you will notice that there will be an increase in per capita income. The people in the rural area, their income will increase. Let's give a practical example. Let's not just rush without getting the real substance of this explanation. Let's take that example of that community I mentioned earlier when I tried to explain the meaning of per capita income. I said the population there is 2,000, and they earn, everybody's earning put together, both the rich and the poor. When you aggregate it, they are earning about 200,000, which automatically means that the per capita income of the environment there is 10,000. All right? Is it 10,000? I hope so. You have a question? What is the difference between the definition of rural development given? Don't worry, just join us. We'll raise that. Okay. So we said that, let's use that example we had earlier. We said the community made 200,000 and the people there are 2,000. So the per capita income there is 100. Sorry, not 1,000 or 10,000. The per capita there is 100. So when we say 100, that means each person averagely is making 100 naira per time of that calculation. Now, if you want to calculate the increase in per capita, let's do it like this, how practically it works. You want to develop the environment, you said, okay, let's increase power supply to that environment. And that is one of the infrastructures that can come in, power supply. Let's educate them more so the schools are improved. Let's give them an opportunity to be more healthy. So the health centers are beefed up. So the people are strong, healthy, and enlightened. And then they have electricity. So you'll notice that some people start doing electric-based business. Business of barbing will increase. The vulcanizer no longer uses fuel for his motor to pump tires. He uses electricity. The schools are using electricity. The internet centers are using electricity. Things are the garri grating machine is no longer using diesel. It's using electricity. Now, when we do our calculation next, yet the community is still averagely 2,000 persons. But when you do your calculation next, what you observe is that they now start earning more because they produce more, they sell to the neighboring community. You now calculate their earnings and found out that instead of earning 200,000 like they used to earn, they are now earning something like 600,000. And they are still 2,000. So you divide it by 2,000 and you get 300, maybe in a space of 2 months. Now, when you get such a result, what you can now say, you deduce from such a result, is that the increase in per capita income is an indication that this community is developing. That rural development plan for that community is working. So that is an example I've just given to you now. Another indicator of rural development is that more even distribution of income. Let's take that same community of 2,000 persons. Let's assume that one man is a very big businessman with supermarkets here and there. The electricity is enabling him to freeze fishes and different things in his freezer and is powering the environment. So he's making more money. Of the 200,000 they used to make before, he was making 80,000. The rest of the 1,999 were making the rest of the money. So you see that the per capita is 100, quite all right, but not everybody is earning that 100 because it's one man that is bringing the bulk of the money. Rural indication, rural indices says that let the income distribution be even. Now, when I give you the example that the income there has increased to 600,000, probably that man now increases from 80,000 to 120. Yet others have increased from maybe 5,000 to 10,000, some 10,000 to 20,000, some 20,000 to 40,000. And that is how we amassed the totality of that 600,000 increase that we are pointing at. So that is a more even distribution of the income. Number 3, reduction in the level of unemployment. People can now work for themselves or establish an establishment that people can now be employed under. Then we have diversification of the economy. If the economy was basically agrarian, that is, they're always farming. Once rural development has been introduced, you cannot see education striving, technology striving, ICT striving, science and tech striving, even agriculture striving. So that's the diversification of the economy. Then the next indicator is increase in supply of high-level manpower. Like educated, skilled persons will start moving into such an environment. Then the next is balanced development. Of all these sectors that you see people participating, you see that they are growing evenly, balanced development. Then we have indigenization of the economic activity. Most economic activity in the environment, the indigenes are part of it. Then we have good health and standard nutrition. Of course, if you're not healthy, you can't really do much. Then we have acquisition of technology. Technology is the use of science to solve human wants and needs. So we start acquiring such technology. These are the indicators or indices of rural development. Now, what are the principles of rural development? The first principle is it has to be accessible, accessibility. Rural development has to be independent, independence. It has to be sustainable. It's not an act, it's a process. It has to be sustained over a period of time. It has to be effective. It's called effectiveness. That is it seeking to solve the educational need of the people? Is it seeking to solve the technological need of the people? If it does solve that problem, then it is effective. Then participation. The people in the rural environment must participate. They must have active participation in it. These are the principles of rural development. And that was that about that one. I'm going to now, I will talk about approaches to rural development, but before we do that, let's attend to some of the questions I can see here. The first question I can see here, I hope maybe I've answered your question. I don't know. You see, I think every development should be done by verifying the needs of the people in order to avert project abandonment. Very correct? Very correct. Now, another comment says, please, sir, what are the hindrances to rural development? If you follow that, principles are rules. They are generic rules that applies everywhere. If you don't follow the principles of rural development, something will happen. Your project will fail. And what are the principles? Look at the 5 of them. If you don't make your rural development project or program accessible for the rural people to be part of it, and it's supposed to be independent of the implementers. Let's say government decides that, I can give you a typical example. There's a health center close to where I live, in a village close to where I live. I know the place. They had a health center in that community. And then what happened? Thieves were coming to harass the staff. When the staff is coming, because the nurses come to work by shift, of course, they come morning, afternoon, evening, they have different shifts. So those that come late shifts, criminals stop them along the way, harass them, take their property. And they're in the rural area. So some of the staff in that community were not willing to come to work. They even sought transfer out of that place. So what made that community unique was that they observed the principle of sustenance and independence, because the government was not able to protect these people. So the staff were going their way. So the community came together and said, okay, this project is our project. If these people leave, our children, our wives, we will suffer. This health center is servicing us. So let us sustain it, because this project is no longer in the hand of government. It is now in our hand. And in truth, the government handed that project. And if you go to your own community, you find out that the rural medical centers or health centers are in the hand of the community. They are the ones that ensure its safety. That's why they are the ones that position it where it is. If they say they want to build a health center, there is a community that will give them where to build it. So the people said this project is our own. So what are we going to do? They set up a vigilante and position them at the corners of the community to ensure that the criminals don't harass the staff of that health center anymore. They even mounted one of their guards in front of the health center. And over time, the criminals left. Now the health center is still up and running. I know of a particular community far away also that criminals disturbed not even only the health center, even one local community bank there. And that community bank shut down because nobody took responsibility to sustain it. That is what we mean when we say sustainability. Sustainability says that it means that the program plan and solutions are relevant to the local social, economic, and administrative conditions of the target rural population. And the program should not be terminated before the stated objectives are achieved, and the program should be sustained by those people until the problem of that area has been addressed. You see, so if the government will not sustain it, the people should sustain it. So they did that, and that program remains sustained. And you can only sustain it when you can adequately ensure that the program is not in the hands of the implementers, that the program can now be in the hand of the people. I didn't say put it, the construction and the treating of patients in the hand of the people. No, he said this independence here simply means that the program the program should be such that helps and supports the rural dwellers, but does not make their livelihood 100% dependent on that program. The rural developers should always try to ask the questions. If this program is discontinued, what will happen to the beneficiaries? That way, you can easily ensure that your program is not hindered. So if you observe the principles, the program rural development will not be hinder. The people can hinder it, corruption can hinder it. Don't worry, we'll get to the problems of rural development very soon. And then you see that a lot of things can hinder rural development. Another question says, what is the difference between definitions of rural development given? Oh, that will really take us back. I won't do that for you, Kemi. Go to your lecture materials, copy out all the definitions and spot the definition, the difference between each definition that was raised out, was mentioned in that lecture material. All right. Okay. Now, let's go to another, of course, the approaches to rural development and the necessity for rural development. Let's go straight to it. We have three approaches, the reformist approach and the structural approach. And then we have the technological approach. What does the reformist approach really mean? In this approach, rural development tries to emphasize, the emphasis is on giving a kind of change, improvement in the behavioral attitude of the rural farmer. In addition to that, efforts are made to find ways and means by which the farmers can play an important part in rural development programs and projects through improvement in their attitude towards the project. You see, there's something that happens in the USA. The US insists that no child should go without primary education. If you're a parent, you can be sued for not giving your child a primary education. If you're a guardian, you can be sued as well. You know why? The government and the people of the states, United States, says that only educated, literate, and enlightened people can be governed. So if you do not reform the mind of the rural farmers, they will not be favorably disposed towards your rural development project. I saw a clip from one, I don't know where, whether it's in our country here or outside the country, where a group of rural dwellers took sticks and were breaking solar panels installed in their community to power either a water, a borehole, or a particular project. They said the solar panel was kind of affecting them. They had one superstition attached to it. Let me tell you why they can afford to do that. It's because they don't have education. They don't understand what a solar panel is all about. So the reformist approach says we'll change the behavior of the rural farmers. We'll make effort to make the rural farmers improve, welcome our rural development projects, and improve the attitude of the farmers towards that project. That way, the reformists will ensure that everyone in the rural area participates and is involved in the rural development program. The next is technological approach. This approach emphasizes technological transformation of different aspects of the rural society, particularly agriculture, in its production process. This could mean a shift from the use of local tools, local implements, to modern technology, like technologies like plows, harrowers, combined harvesters, the use of improved seedlings, modern storage facilities, insecticides, pesticides, fertilizers, and so on. Then the third approach to rural development is the structural approach. The structural approach to rural development seeks to transform the existing economic, social, political, and political relationship in such a way that those who were previously disadvantaged find their positions changed. The social, political, and economic relationships that need to be changed include one, relationship between landlords and tenants. Of course, we know when you say landlords and tenants, we're talking of landlords and tenants, owners of the land in which they farm, and tenant farmers. Relationship between poor peasant farmers and money lenders. Remember, in the rural areas, we don't have advanced financial institutions. So they make use of money lenders all the time. Relationship between farmers and traditional rulers, because the traditional rulers are the custodians of the tradition of the people. Then relationship between the poor peasants and middlemen that help them take their product from the farm gate. When you put all this relationship together, you will see social relationship there, you see political relationship there, you see economic relationship there. Now, the structural transformation of the rural communities is attained through what is known as agrarian reform, that is agricultural reform. most of which are concerned with land distribution. All this relationship is so that the people can make more money. Now, these are the approaches. Now, what are the problems of rural areas? There is a problem. The first problem is the vicious circle of poverty. Rural dwellers experience vicious cycle of poverty. They have low savings, resulting in low investments, and of course, low capital formation. This in turn brings low income. Rural development programs and policies need to address this, right? Then number two, poor rural infrastructure. Please ask your questions. So I will stop once in a while and read the questions I can see in the chat box. Now we have poor rural infrastructure. We know rural infrastructure like electricity, boreholes, water, and all that. They are poor, and that is a problem of rural areas. Then we have high population density. A high number of Nigerian populace live in the rural area. You know, initially we said that what differentiates a rural area from an urban area is the fewness of people that are in the rural area. People in the rural area are fewer than people in the urban area. That is when we look at urban rural community in isolation. But this problem we are talking of high population density is that if you check the combined persons living in a particular place, a rural population, you have more people in one space or combined as rural areas than urban areas. Of course, how many urban areas do you have in a state? Probably 4 or 5 urban areas, urban real communities in some states. But the rest of the state that carries the entire population that is on our census map are rural areas. So you see why we say high population density. You see one person giving birth to 8 children, 15 children, but in the urban area, they don't have just 2 children, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, sometimes no children at all. Another problem of rural areas is high level of illiteracy. Literacy is the ability to read and write. Illiteracy is high in the rural area. That is where people cannot read and write. This could be because of the lack of good schools or facilities of learning in that environment. It still remains a problem. Then we also have the problem of low social interaction and low politics. In some areas, the rural dwellers live in isolation. That is, they just live with them. They don't interact with other people. This can be a problem. When you have low social interaction and slow local politics going for you, you will be poor because you can't richly engage others. Then we have harmful traditional practices. Yes, in your community, in my community, we have some practices that are just obnoxious practices. You know, there's a particular practice that say people cannot go to the market on a particular day. In a modern day like this, if you keep doing that, what will happen is that people will not earn money the day marketers or their customers are coming from far and wide to trade with them because you have a practice that says you should not come out. Yet, some other persons that have the practice to come out in the neighboring communities out and is taking your customer from you. So that's the problem. Then we have lack of employment opportunities. It's obvious why they don't have high employment opportunities because it's rural. There are no industries, there are no banks, there are no specialized organizations, the education is poor. So they lack employment opportunities. Then we have rural-urban migration. The rural dwellers migrate to urban areas, from rural areas to urban areas or urban centers in search of good jobs. And when they keep doing that, they reduce the potentials of those that could help the rural areas improve. Rural-urban migration can be a problem. Now, what are the necessities for rural development in Nigeria? One, rural people constitute the vast majority of the Nigerian population. This is so despite the migration of people from rural to urban areas. All right. So most of the food production which Nigerians consume is produced in the rural areas by rural dwellers. So much of the country's agricultural needs for raw materials and subsequent industrial needs for economic growth are produced in the rural areas. So it's necessary that we have rural development. Now, it's also necessary that rural development happens because 2 of the 5 national objectives are stated in the national policy on education. These 2 are a just and egalitarian society. Number 2, a united, strong, and self-reliant nation. These two objectives in the national policy on education about Nigeria can only be fulfilled if rural development happens in the rural area. Because if rural development happens, then you have an egalitarian society, people that are strong enough to fight, people that are not strong enough to farm, people that are strong enough to work. And then we can now become self-reliant. Then number 5, inequality exists in social and educational amenities, but both between urban and rural areas. You see that when they are producing, if they are giving slots for those that will work in government offices, you see those in the urban areas get a lot because they believe that there is a concentration of those with the skills in the urban areas than those in the rural areas. And that is what we call inequalities. Because of that inequality, the rural area needs to be developed. Number 6, inequalities exist in the living standards among rural dwellers. That is a necessity for rural development. Number 7, most rural dwellers live below poverty levels, which calls for urgent attention. And that is a necessity for rural development. Okay. So we've just handled module 2 now, unit 2 and 3. So let's see the much we can do before we call it a day. Now, we also discussed planning, implementation, appraisal, and financing of rural development projects. We'll jump here and there, so that will be fast. What is the meaning of plan? Plan, according to Olarewaju, is a statement of how a thing is to be done. It is a process of determining the course of action that is necessary to be taken in the pursuit of a particular goal or action or activity of an objective. It is a written document setting out the activities, times, and budgets required to meet a set goal. Now, plans provide a rational approach to achieving pre-selected objectives. They direct the effort of all concerned towards achieving the objective. Now, everybody has a plan. And within that plan, there's a stipulation of what should be done, who does what, and how it should be done. So that also applies to rural development. Planning is key. Now, what are the elements of planning? Planning of rural development is very significant, and it could make or mar the success of the rural development. A carefully planned rural development action has the tendency to achieve stated objectives by the end. This is the primary stage. This is the primary stage that needs experts' ideas and extreme care. It could be a long-term plan or a short-term plan, depending on the nature of the program that is implemented, the target groups, and the set objective of such programs. Now, the key elements that should not escape your mind if you're a rural development planner is 1, programs should be based on existing rural conditions of the target group, not based on something you imagined. It should be based on the rural conditions of the target group. Number 2, programs should address the felt need of the people. Number 3, existing cultural practices of the people should be considered. This is very important because once your program is felt as undermining the people's culture, the people's way of life, the people's practices and beliefs, the people will reject that program. Number 4, the experience of well-trained agents and professionals should be utilized because they are experienced. Number 5, local leaders, I tend to call them opinion leaders, in the area should be recognized and consulted, because after you have left as a program implementer, as a rural development planner, after you have left, it is these leaders that will use the word of mouth to continue to convince the people on how and why the project is necessary. All right? I will attend to you later. Just be patient. The next is that there should be collective efforts of all relevant people in the area. And then number 7, there should be a well-planned educational and sensitization program for the people. as a necessity for collaboration. They need to be told, we're coming to do a borehole for you. The borehole is for you. We're coming to rebuild your market. The market shade is for our wives and our mothers. We are coming to repair the schools. We are installing modern training facilities for you in the school. So when you see the walls being cracked, when you see the bulldozers coming, don't be afraid. We want to put something more improved. Sensitization should be done. These are elements of planning. Number 8, basic needs of the people should be carefully assessed. And number 9, goals and objectives of the program should be carefully determined. And then finally, local resources of the people should be assessed and utilized as much as possible. Now, rural development project plan implementation and appraisals. Now, rural development plan planning, implementation, and appraisal, according to Olaraju, involves this step. The first is the need assessment, objective selection, prioritization of objectives, determining resources to be used, program design, program implementation, and finally, evaluation of what you have implemented. So you see the sequence. The first is the need assessment. I've mentioned this earlier, but let's say it again. This is the first stage of rural development plan. This involves identifying the felt need of the target groups. The planner tries to sort out the real needs of or problems of the rural community. Such needs or problem could be tangible or intangible. Like I told you, you may be saying that the needs of the community, you've done your survey, and the need, you found out that there's a security problem. And yet the people are telling you the security problem is not a problem. Do our markets for our mothers and our wives. That is the felt needs for us. The security problem, we will solve it. You see, if you go that way, that is a proper need assessment because the people are telling you what they need. How do you elicit this need assessment? You can do it through a questionnaire. Questionnaires are documents that have questions that people in the locality will answer. And with those questions, after analyzing, you will know what their needs are. You could do an interview, face-to-face interview, group interview, town hall meeting. You can do observation by seeing the situation yourself that this is an issue. You can have a focus group discussion. You can have a research expert that could analyze these findings for you and extract the needs for you. So, but number one stage in rural development project plan, implementation and appraisal stages is one, needs assessment. You need to know what the need of the people are. Number two is objective selection. Basically, once the needs or problems of the rural community have been identified, the planner carefully draws out the objectives. The objectives to be achieved based on the needs. If it is an educational need, for instance, given the fact that there are high illiteracy level or rates in the rural area, the objective could be, since we have a problem of education, the objective could just be, should we go for basic literacy for the people? Should we go for functional literacy for the people? Should we tend to achieve secondary education for the people? If the objectives are wisely set, the program may not be result-oriented. So you see that this objective selection helps you to focus on one particular part of your needs. They've seen the need, but let's now narrow it down carefully to what we need to do. Now, number three is prioritizing the objective. You now say, okay, since these people are older people, let's focus on adult education for them. And then number four, determining the resources. We're still using that education as an example. You ask yourself, what are the resources needed? What are the resources needed for this educational training we are planning to do for these people? Okay, then number five. Program design. You try to articulate the human and material resources that may be needed for achieving the objective you have prioritized. All right. Then we have the program implementation. At this stage, this is the stage where actions takes place. The materials and human resources are put to use. So after implementation, we now have evaluation. Now, at the point of evaluation, take a look at this diagram. You see that number 1 is need assessment, number 2, objective selection, number 3, prioritizing objectives, number 4, determining resources, number 5, program design, number 6, program implementation, number 7, evaluation. Evaluation, at that point, you evaluate all the things you have implemented to see if implementation result matches the objective of your project objectives. And if it doesn't, you move back again. What does that mean? It means that you move back to need assessment. We've done this, but we didn't achieve the result. Let's analyze again. Let's see if we were wrong in assessing our needs. And then you will get another need. And then you start the project again. That now justifies the fact that rural development is a process, not an act. All right? Now, financing rural development project. What's the meaning of finance? Finance is the raising of funds by individuals, cooperative organizations or enterprises, firms, government, or non-governmental organizations for the day-to-day running and management of their business. So what is rural financing? According to WOBE 2006, rural finances encompasses the financial side of almost all economic processes of rural areas. What is the objective? Okay, before I go to the objective, there's a question I have here. I need someone to help me out. Awa just asked us a question. She said, what are the principles of rural development? I remember I mentioned the principles of rural development not too long ago. Who can tell me one of the principles of rural development? I mentioned it not too long ago. Can anybody remember? Or am I here alone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, give me one of them, Moses.
Accessibility.
Okay, acceptability.
Accessibility. As in accessible.
Okay. Can you see what I'm showing you on your screen now, Awa? Number 1 is accessibility. Number 2 is independence. These are the principles of rural development. Number 3, sustainability. Number 4, effectiveness. Number 5, participation. So that answers your question, Awa. Okay.
I can see you, sir.
Okay, good. Now let's go back to our objective. I think I should run quickly with this. The objectives, I need us to talk. Now we have indigenous self-help organizations in rural financing, and we mentioned some of them: social clubs, age grades, youth clubs, religious organizations, development unions, cooperative societies, and so on. And they contribute to rural financing in several ways because they are groups and they tend to contribute monies to finance rural projects and all that. Okay. For rural development and rural financing, there are special institutions like community banks, urban development banks, cooperative banks. They have their objectives and so on. So let's move on. I want to move to something else. Now, what are the typical problems of rural areas? I think we've mentioned that before. Then problems of rural development. I think after that, I will have to allow us to talk. All right, I'm going to just talk about these problems and allow us to talk. You can ask your questions, then I'll shut it down for today. That is about it for us. We've taken a lot of our time. Now, what are the typical problems of rural development? We said low income and employment are among the main problems inherent in the rural area. Rural areas tend to have surplus labor due to few jobs that are open. Most new jobs are for unskilled workers, and it's a problem. Workers are with high qualification migrate to the system, to the cities, and that amounts to rural-urban migration, and that could be a problem also. Okay, we also have problems, and these problems can be solved by creating more employment opportunities and extra income for the people of the region. And some of these problems will vanish. Problems of rural labor, of the labor force in the rural areas being okay, problems of the labor force are the most serious and difficult to solve because they affect people with their skills, initiative, and community and opportunities. Besides unemployment, another problem is the depopulation of the rural areas and the drastic aging process. We mentioned rural-urban migration as a problem. Okay. I'm moving straight to the problem of rural development in Nigeria. One, the problem of rural development in Nigeria, one is approaches to rural development in Nigeria have been ad hoc. That is, when we say ad hoc, is that we don't have a comprehensive plan to it. We just solve the problem as they come. Have been ad hoc in nature. Number two, rural development programs in Nigeria lack the rudiments of long-term planning. Number three, most designs and implementation strategies of rural development projects in Nigeria appeal only to the political needs of the ruling class, those that are implementing the development plans. Number four, some of the rural development projects are white elephant projects that do not address the felt needs of the people. You can see we've used the word the felt need of the people again and again and again. And that tells you that once you try to attempt to fix the people without the people, you will fail. So you have to get actually what the people need, and that will help you to solve their problem. Number five, most rural development programs are geared towards agricultural matters only. But it's not only agriculture that is in the rural areas. We have educational needs, we have social needs, we have political needs, and so on. Number six, inadequate extension and research facilities militate against rural development efforts in Nigeria. I've taught in another course I teach students extension programs extension programs are programs that take learning, real learning techniques, principles, practices to where they are needed. So extension, just like your extension cable takes electricity from where it is to bring it close to you on your bed so you can charge your phone. So also extension program does that for the rural populace. So when we have inadequate extension and research facilities, it militates against the rural developers because at that point, they are unable to solve problems that the extension institutions should have helped them to solve. Now, some of the rural development projects are planned and implemented with not accurate data. Data can help you, data can speak. So it can tell you a lot about a situation. Number eight, wrong policy statements that render development project and program ineffective can be a problem. We have negative attitude of rural dwellers. Rural dwellers can have negative attitude. I told you guys in one of our sessions here how rural dwellers stopped my friend from implementing a construction project he had in a particular area because they came and seized everything, saying he must pay them to do a project for them, a project that will benefit them. They said he must pay them. And you can see that is a wrong attitude, a negative attitude at that. Then number 10 there is embezzlement and corruption. That is another issue. So at this point, I would like to open the floor. If you have a question, please ask. Please ask your questions at this point. You can turn on your mic and ask your questions at this point. I'll ask you, may I have my own questions to ask? Okay, it's my turn. Let me ask. Have you all attended your discussion forum questions at the school platform? Have you attempted your questions to answer those questions at the discussion forum? Is anybody having any challenge with that? discussion forum. Okay, like all of you have attempted that. Okay, that's fine. Now, if you have a question, ask, because I'll be shutting down now. I have another class. I have another engagement after this. Okay, I have somebody. Just type your questions if you. All right, so if you have not attended to all your discussion forum, that is not good. Please, we're running out of time. We're running out of time. And I heard that the exams is close by and the timetable is out. So if you've not attended your discussion forum, you are wrong, because your TMAs are based on that discussion forum. Okay, Esther, you need to go and listen to the instructional videos. That way, you will understand what is happening. All right. So. All right. Take your time. For those that have not, you can see all the materials. I have them on my channel. If you go there, you will see them. Just go under rural development. You will see all of them there. All right. For those that are new, that are just joining, this is the channel here. You will see all the videos there. Okay. Thank you for joining. I think I should call it a day at this point. We shall see in our next session. I don't have any more questions from you. I pray you write your exam and you pass them. All right? Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and see you at the platform. I just hope that I hope that you don't have difficulties. All right. All right. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.